Welcome to EPG Pathshala lecture series for MArch students, and in this lecture series on planting design we shall see and start looking at an introduction to planting design. We would be looking at the introduction as under 4 topics. First is why planting design, what is the need for doing the design with considering plants as a living material. Then we have a set of justifications as to why we need to do planting design itself. Then we would look at plants as living materials themselves and how we could use them considering the fact that they have life within them, and also the factors that affect the plant life as such. First, we would look at why planting design. Planting design is one of the essential tools in making and managing a living environment where plants play a significant role in the development of a lively, resilient, complex and sustainable landscape. It is very important to know that planting design involves plants as living materials which really have a growth, just like as how human beings grow as such. Everything that has life has something called as growth, and it is important for us to understand as designers and architects that even plants do have life, and they also go through a series of change as they grow together, and by the way that it evolves or it grows, it means that they change the living environment in which it is being set, and they cause also a change in the life of those who live in that particular environment, and it causes a difference in both the micro and the macro scales, as well as in every part of life that deals with. So, planting design is a very essential tool in making and managing this living environment, and this is something that is very important to understand at the outset of planting design, so that we would be able to make a particular environment that is ultimately sustainable, and also we can give a certain management scheme for that particular design, so that it grows to its full maturity and it evolves to be the environment that it is really intended to be. And also it helps us to restore and maintain a sustainable relationship between people and their environment in a constant of change. As we are aware that there are a lot of factors that change in our environment, and plants are also one of them. As humans change, as human social behavior changes, there is also plants which change with respect to their character, with respect to their quality, as well as in respect to their characteristics as such, and also in the way they play their particular role in the environment. So, it is very important that we allow the plants to restore and maintain that relationship between people and that environment, and both are mutually, and to make sure that both are mutually benefited by this particular aspect as such. So, planting design plays a very important role in creating this type of a sustainable environment for the people to live in, so that it is a more better and living environment is being created by means of plants. According to Nick Robinson, there are 3 main justifications for doing planting design as such. One is the functional justification, the second one is the ecological justification, and the third one is the aesthetical justification. Everything that is being put in the environment has a certain function to play, and so are plants, and it is very important to understand that these plants also need to be put in the places where they are, so that they create a function. If you see through the annals of history, wherever planting has been done, there has been a certain kind of function that has been intended for it. Secondly, we have the ecological justification, wherein when the because our planet is in a state of flux, it is changing, it is an environment which has constantly changed over the years, and there are so many factors that contribute to the ecology of this entire planet, and plants play a very significant role as to how these kind of factors are being monitored, and how these factors are being altered, how the environment changes, how the ecological whole cycle as such evolves around the planting, it is very important to have this kind of a justification, so that plants can play a significant role in bringing about or setting up the right ecological approach in a particular environment. Thirdly, but very important for us as architects and designers, is that we need plants also to do our aesthetical part, to bring in the aesthetical pleasure to the eyes of the user, because it can make a lot of difference in the way that we look at them. The functional justification of plants is something that we would look at first. The arrangement and cultivation of plantings has expressed human use of the land since historical times. Since history, plants have been used to exhibit a certain kind of function, and we could look at a lot of examples like the Mughal gardens or even the Persian gardens, where planting has been used or arranged in a particular way, so that it creates a sense of movement, it creates a sense of it gives a character, a visual character of vistas, creating vistas, and also creating focus as such, wherein these plants have all been arranged in such a way so that it performs that particular function, and it is also become a landmark space when it comes to exhibiting or highlighting a particular monument. That is a very important part of the history that we are found in. The planting is part of an environment that fits the function. Any planting that we choose needs to fit the function, and it is very important that we identify what is the function is, and also at the same time I choose the right kind of plant that would suit that particular function, so that the function is well executed, and also it plays a very important part in aiding the particular user to get the most or the highest amount of benefit from that particular area. The planting design process always should seek to fit as well as to facilitate the needs of the user and the environment, because ultimately it's the user who is going to be the person who is going to live in that particular space or in that particular environment, and it is very important that we fully justify the function that the plants are have to do in that particular kind of environment. Then we come to the ecological justification of why we need to do planting design considering the ecology of a place. Planting design and its subsequent care can be understood in the broader sense as management of natural vegetation process. As we understand that this planet Earth has a series of cyclic processes that keep happening throughout all its different dimensions or parameters, like the sky, the wind, the rain, and the earth, and under the earth the subterranean systems. Everything has a kind of a process that is a part of an ecological cycle, and plants also play a very significant role in this cycle, so that so that the plants contribute major to the ecological character, as well as it plays in a very important role in managing the ecological process as such. A much greater degree of control over the natural processes can be exercised, by which planting colonization or succession will be enough to repair the loss of the ecosystem or to make an environment suitable for human needs. So we could put in plants so that it would whether it would be the natural process of colonization, or if we allow the plants to succeed in a particular area, so that by the time it reaches its maturity, it certainly creates or contributes a very important role or a function to the ecological landscape, and also to the ecological character of the environment that it has been ultimately put in. You would see that we could see that we have a particular tree over here, and we have the natural canal systems, which you can find in a very in parts of Kerala, where the plant as such in the setting that is performs a function, and whether it can be a single plant or a series of plants, we certainly do understand that it contributes to the ecology of the local place as well as to the macro character of an entire town or a region itself. Then as architects, it's very important for us to understand the aesthetical justification, because planting offers sensory as well as other enjoyable experiences and also creates a lot of opportunities for art and design. If you could see, the usage of plants can be created in various ways, so that any kind of backdrop, any kind of foreground can be created when we do our planting design, and that is why it becomes a very important justification as such as architects to give our users or even the clients a very important aesthetical place, so that a quality of life is improved. It plays an important objective. It gives an important objective in planting design, is that it creates the aesthetical pleasure, something that is very good to look at, and also it really contributes to the daily well-being of that particular place. Like the pleasure of a loving tended garden or of contact with wild plants can contribute a lot to our daily well-being. Now we shall look at plants as living materials and their characteristics. To look at plants as living materials, it is very important as landscape architects to understand that plants have life, and it is very important to appreciate that these plants are always growing, they are always changing, and they are interacting organisms, and they are plant communities, and they are always in a certain change of flux. They have their own dynamic and their developmental order, and they keep changing right through as the time proceeds or goes. So what you see as a plant in day 1 may not be the same as you would proceed in day 2 or day 30 or day 360 of your planting of the planting environment that you look at. It takes time to change, and plants should be viewed as living materials, and it would be something non-beneficial to expect of plants to give their full aesthetic or the intended function right from day 1. It requires a certain amount of patience to allow the plants to grow, to evolve as such into its total, and for it to exhibit its total character, so that we would ultimately be able to offer to the user the best solution when it comes to planting design. That's why it's very important to understand the dynamic and the developmental order of the planting as such. And it is very important to know that once we have put in a planting system, it is very important that we can only manage it and we cannot change it, because plants have their own way of growth, they have their own way of evolvement, and they also grow as time proceeds, and it is something that we can manage, and when we manage them effectively, it can give us the best results as such. So it's very important to understand in the first place that plants are living materials themselves, and they have life, and their characteristics are always changing with respect to time. You can see a particular slide where we can see how plants have evolved over time and how the transformation takes place in this particular area. If you see this first picture, we could see that closer to this building block, we have a series of planting right there at the lower level of planting, and over the years, probably after 3 years, you can see the large growth of plants which comes really up to the first floor level abutting the building. And it is also important to see, it will be very interesting to identify and also to see that these plants have grown over the years as such. Now after 10 years, you can see that these trees and these shrubs have grown, so that now today you do not see the building themselves, and that is something that really reinforces the truth that plants are living materials themselves, and they have their own way of transformation, and also the transformation is not within themselves, but they also transform the space that it creates. It could be a local place or even probably an entire region which actually changes into a more dense and ultimately lush green kind of environment when we see here over here, as we see in these slides, as how it was, how a place has changed because the planting has evolved, or the planting scheme or the management has been done in such a way so that it really encloses the particular region. It clearly creates that kind of a green barrier or a boundary for a particular region. You could see over these few slides as to how planting planting or planting management has evolved, and also how it has changed the character of a particular space, whether it is a road or whether it is you would also see that in a particular environment or an open space as such, how plants have evolved or changed over many years. Plants do have a longer lifespan, and it can really make a lot of change. Here we could see how in a small project as such, how plants have opened, and this might have been around day 30 of that particular project, and maybe after 3-4 months, how the plants have grown into a different stage and how it has covered up that particular area. And ultimately, as time progresses, maybe after 8 to 10 months, how the entire rear space has been cleared off, right from day 30 to probably day 350, like that. So if you look at this succession from this particular slide to this particular slide, then we could really understand as to how plants have changed over time, and it has nearly given a kind of completed imagery, and it performs that function. Okay, what is the function that we see here? Probably you want to screen a generator which is there at the back, and you plant the tall plants at the rear end, and there you go, and by the time the plant reaches the full maturity, you would have screened a particular element that is not very likely to be seen, or something that is undesirable. It can perform the function of even screening. So it's very important to understand plants as living materials as such. As we know that vegetation is continually interacting with its physical environment, plant is lives in an environment, and just like human beings, all our particular surrounding conditions affect us as human beings. In the same way, plants also are affected by so many factors that are found, whether it would be its neighbors, or it is the land in which it is, whether it's the water quality. There are so many factors that significantly affect the planting design as such. So it causes many environmental factors cause significant variation in the growth of plants. One is weather itself. What is the weather like, whether it's very rainy or very hot. In India, we have different kinds of weather systems, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, and we understand that if each plant or each type of plant has a significant way of dealing with that kind of a weather condition, or adapts itself to that kind of a weather situation very well. Then we have the elevation or the topography of site. Is it on top of a hill, or is it down the valley, or is it a lowland or a highland? Everything, the elevation of a particular site, which is also an important criteria which affects the life of a plant, and also the microclimate. Also the microclimate of a particular place, whether there is a lot of shade and there is a lot of cool environment that has already been there, for example like a forest in a particular area. That is also something that we need to understand and see how the microclimate of a particular place is being altered by the plants themselves. And once the plant starts to involve in themselves in altering the microclimate, it gradually starts to initially affect their own way of dealing with the environment, also the way of working with the working out the design in that particular area. And also you have light. Light is also an important factor which alters the quality of a particular space. The light, whether it's every plant is receptive to a certain kind of lighting condition, whether it's a semi-shade. Some plants require full sun, some plants can thrive in a very low light as well. So plants do also, since they have life, and since they have characteristics which responds to light within their own structures. Light plays an important role in the way that it alters the particular environment as such. Then the moisture of the atmosphere also changes, causes a significant variation in the growth of plants. Regional and local soil variations also change with respect to the topography, with respect to the whether it's a coastal region or an inland. It changes as such in a very significant way, and it is very important for us to identify that these kind of factors really do play a lot of role in which plants can be really affected, or else in a way that it could be managed as well in the area that we are trying to use as such. So, plants as living materials. So, plants can really modify microclimate of a particular place. It can provide the necessary cooling, it can bring down temperatures, it can cause a significant change to the urban heat island, it can introduce shade and shelter for any particular area as such. It increases the humidity of a place, it cuts down this the heat as such, and it increases the humidity, and also it also reduces the precipitation at the ground level, so that it plays a significant role in preventing something like soil erosion, or even protects the lower layer of planting that is there. So, there are a lot of as living materials themselves, plants do play a certain amount of function, and it's the function that shows that they have life and they are truly to be considered as living materials, and they cause a significant impact in the way that it is being put in. And there are certain other factors also that affect the plant development. One is the how it is influenced by its neighbors, okay, and also vegetation also affects soil conditions. It reduces the moisture and the nutrients which is available in the short term. The idea is that when planting is being done and when the plants start to grow, it takes the nutrients from the soil, and the nutrient level in the soil starts to come down. But over a period of time, the plants, since they have life, they start to give back to the moisture, give back to the soil its nutrient contents, and also it increases the essential humus and the nutrient content of the soil. Disease and pests also affect the growth and the development of plants. Animal grazing, the growth of some invasive species also affects the growth of plants, where one species takes over another species. These also affect the growth of plants, but at the same time there are also some other species which also favor the growth of other plants and cause favorable conditions so that these other plants could also grow. And also these kind of invasion or these kind of growth or development affects the individual plant form itself, and also causes considerable change in the composition of the planting communities as such. Human pressures are another reason why planting changes in this particular environment, like an afforestation or anything that changes. Human pressures are crucial and unpredictable factor that affects plant growth and development. And pollution, vandalism, rubbish dumping, all these are serious concerns that we have in our environment today that affects the plants as living materials, and also they affect the development of plants, so that the intended purpose for which the planting has been done has not reached its full capacity, or it has not been the objectives has not been met as such. So, it's very important to address these kind of issues right there, where the entire scope of addressing or preserving the planting community as such lies with the humans. So, it is very important to also take up these kind of responsibilities as such as citizens to refrain from those things which cause or which hamper the development of plants. So, these kind of human pressures seriously interferes with the form and the health of the plants, and once the health is altered or it is affected, it also affects the entire developmental growth of the plant. Erosion is another factor which happens due to excessive foot and traffic, pedal, motorcycle riding, and also human movement as such, how humans clear a particular lower layer of a particular area, and also how it starts to change the lower layer of vegetation, and also it regenerates, and also the change which is brought about by shrubs. Probably it might be just under layer of a particular tree that is there, which has been fully cleared up for any particular human function as such. So, there are a lot of other factors that seriously affect plant growth. Another significant aspect is that the anthropogenic influences that have been brought about by planting development or in the plant development as such. As a very culturally sensitive country, our India has a lot of different cultures where a particular culture is sensitive to a particular kind of plant. Probably they regard a particular kind of plant or tree as much sacred, or else they do not, they might think that a particular plant or a particular species might be very inauspicious. So these kind of plants are gradually removed or being altered in those particular areas, by which we could understand that there are certain anthropogenic influences or human influences based on their cultural beliefs and also many other conditions by which the plant growth as such or a development of a plant is being hindered, or else it's encouraged. So it's very important to understand that plants also are subject to such kind of influences as they grow together as any other living material, or rather as how our humans would actually be. So in conclusion, it's very important to understand that there are different roles which are played by many unpredictable elements with respect to the aspect of planting design. So we could understand that we do not have anything that is sure. There are so many factors that affect plants. There are so many unseen conditions that affect plants, and it is very important to be able to understand that there are many roles that are played by unpredictable elements with the aspect of planting design, and the designer must ultimately be ready to bring in a particular kind of system wherein he is able to accommodate such kind of factors that could affect the planting design as such, and it also requires a better management process for the planting design as such to evolve into its required intent as such. It may be the inherent nature of the material through the changing climatic conditions to the difficulties of communicating the design processes to the ones who execute the development over a period of time. So it is very important that right from a point from where a project is being started or evolved to the point that it actually goes forward and it goes to its place of execution, it's very important that to understand that it is necessary to communicate what are the changes that could happen in that particular area. It becomes very vital to understand what are the situations that will really affect the character of the place, so that the plants as living materials are allowed to grow in that particular area, allowed to survive the local conditions, or else the other conditions that could really hinder or pose a challenge to the very environment in which they are put in, so that one day the planting design intent is being fully achieved, the objectives are achieved, so that it performs that function, and the entire landscape evolves in such a way that it gives us the best results as such. So it's very important to understand the inherent nature of the material itself, and this is only possible by understanding that plants have life and they are living materials themselves, and they live, they go through change, they go through every different kind of flux or change in their own character or their intrinsic character as such. So it's important to understand, and also it is also important as architects to communicate the difficulties in the evolvement process as such. Thank you.